can't tell you how sad it made me to hear Black men tell me time after time after time that they don't feel safe anywhere.
Mm,
Not at home, not
yeah.
at work,
Yeah.
not in their community, not at church.
That, along with the whole fear of failure thing that kind of rests in me, anytime that we have a disagreement, she's fine with fighting.
Mhm,
She's 100% fine with fighting.
mhm,
I'm not
mhm.
because I feel like, the thing's gonna fall apart and it's gonna fail.
The first thing that I really say to it, right, like, is I tend to lean into the fear of failure. Like, where is this coming from? Why is this fear so great?
Welcome to season 3. Holy smokes. Season 3 of Lunch with the Cool Kids. My God, wherever you listen to, however you listen, I appreciate you for spending your time with us. This is the season where we're going to talk about life, love, and laughter, all those things. And this ain't going to be like the Cheesecake Factory's 50-50 conversations and stuff like that. Hopefully, you'll leave this conversation better off than you started. So if that's something that you think that you would appreciate or enjoy, go ahead and subscribe right now. Some of us may or may not know we may be dealing with seasonal depression. And now that we're into like the colder parts of it, hopefully, man, this next conversation, these next couple of moments, we can give you some tools to help deal with that. And maybe even identify if you may be even going through that. And we'll jump into it. I have somebody who's way smarter than me because oh man, you started listening to my advice, man. You may you may be it may be a rough winter for you. So I brought in the big guns. She is a licensed therapist, so she's not making it up, y'all. Um, so I'm very excited to introduce is it doctor? What are we?
No, not doctor.
Okay.
Just Shamara.
Okay, just Shamara.
Just Shamara.
Um, I'm gonna call her doctor. Ladies and gentlemen, Shamara Moody, LPC.
Yes.
She is really, really smart, and you're gonna see why. So I'm just excited to get into this conversation. Shamara,
Yes.
what should I call you? Should I call you your highness? What should I?
You could just call me Shamara.
Okay.
Shamara is good.
Okay. Shamara, your majesty will.
You can leave off the ladder.
Okay. Um, I wanted to reach out to you because um, I have so many people in my life who over the last couple of years they said that winter is kind of a rough time for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and for a long time, nobody really had a name for it. It
Mhm.
was just kind of the winter blues.
Yeah.
It was the winter blues. And maybe even me too. I don't know. But like recently, it's been kind of an actual diagnosis. And the acronym is SAD.
Yes.
Uh,
Seasonal affective disorder.
yes.
Mhm.
Um, can you tell us what does that look like?
What does that look like in people of color or in general? Because
Oh,
it could look a lot different for people that look like me and you.
well, I think the people that look like me and you are probably the people that are watching right now.
So, for African Americans, it could look like increased irritability, right? Like it could look like just very irritable, lack of patience, decreased
Mm,
motivation, just kind of feeling like I've heard people compare it to like just feeling like blah or like not myself.
mm. Wow. Okay. Okay. What else? Because as you're saying that, I'm like, hold on.
Yeah, it can look like decreased appetite. So eating disturbances, right? Whether that's eating too much or, not eating enough. It could look like sleep disturbances, whether that's sleeping too much or not sleeping enough. Um, like impairment of some sort.
So that's for us, like in general, for the non us's? Like, what is it what does it look like there?
Um, a lot of the same things, but maybe like less of the irritability. I just noticed like with my clients that are African Americans, it tends to be increased irritability and frustration and anger. In comparison to my clients that may identify as another race.
$1,000,000 question.
Yes.
Do you see it more in men or women?
Surprisingly, last year, 2024, I saw a lot of black men. Honestly, probably the most black men I've seen in like my now 15 years of doing this. Um, yeah, and I was really shocked. Thankful, like, thankful that the conversation is changing, right? To the
Yeah.
point where men are more open to going to therapy and, like, even, speaking publicly about it, like, not ashamed of it. Like, I've been glad to see that. Prior to last year, though, like, mostly women, mostly black women.
So what is it? Is it like how would somebody reach out to you? Are they going well, that's the question. How would somebody reach out to you? But like recently, has it been like a, hey, I don't know, things have just been kind of
Mhm, mhm.
yeah,
So right now, I am in private practice, but my private practice is not accepting new clients. But I do contract work with companies that offer like EAP services, and so a lot of my clients have been finding me through their benefits, right? So you go, you do an assessment, and then like after you do this assessment, it gives you like a list of therapists to choose from, and so they read over my bio and they select me from that. And then that first initial session is kind of like, the assessment we kind of gauging is seeing like what's the presenting problem, like what are you looking to accomplish in therapy, like why even come to therapy. One of the things that I find with men, a lot of them come because they're significant others that they need to talk to somebody.
yes, because my significant other says the exact same thing. And okay, so as a man, let
Hmm.
me just say this. Um, and like I'm not super young, but at the same time, I'm not like really, really old.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
by definition middle age.
Hmm.
So I don't necessarily not have a problem with therapy.
Yes.
Uh just like the same way I don't have a problem with going to the doctor. It's not that I have a problem with it, it's that I don't the idea of the time that it takes
Hmm.
I feel like that I don't have the capacity for it. Even though that like I know that I need it and I know I benefit from it. And when I go,
Right.
it's great. But I feel like, man, I'm doing so much stuff to hold life together.
Yeah.
I don't have room for it. Do you see a lot of that? Or not? If not, you may not.
You know, do I see a lot of that? No. I
Okay.
don't see a lot of that. But I do wanna ask you a question, right?
Sure.
Um, have you been to therapy before?
As I drink my water. yes, I yes, I have. Yes, I have, and I'll expound on that, but yes, I have.
What was your experience like?
So let me tell you, as I drink my water, um, my experience, the first time me and my wife were fighting like cats and dogs,
Mhm.
100% terrible, and we went and we saw somebody, and she was the therapist leaned super super heavy towards my wife's point of view,
Okay.
and I'm not gonna say what race she was, but you know,
Noted.
so um everything my wife said that she told the therapist, she was like, because she just had the baby.
Yeah.
So it was like oh man, poor wife. Her name is Danielle.
Mhm.
Poor Danielle, how are
Mhm.
you doing? And then she would say something else going on in life. Oh my God, how are you making it? Like you're so strong, you're so brave.
Yeah.
And like it was just a really lean towards her a lot.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, she is strong and she is brave, but we're both here.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And like, so that kind of put me off. And I think the results of that session was like, okay, Gerald, that's me, y'all. Okay, Gerald, well, y'all can work together, but you need to do better. So I was like, Well, now therapy is becoming like a me bashing thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like that kind of sucked. So that was my first experience of therapy. We had a couple of more therapists,
Okay.
and they were better. Uh they were better, but that first initial thing, it was kind of bad. Second version was just me. Um when I would have therapy, not couples therapy, just me.
Right. Individual.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it was the greatest thing that I have ever been to in my life, because I felt like that as a man and as a husband and as a father and, as a provider and as a Christian who's supposed to have all the answers and stuff like that,
Right.
I felt like that I never really had a chance to just talk and be heard. And I think that's one of the things that happens with people who may be gifted or maybe whatever, as W.E.B. Du Bois called it, the talented 10th.
Mhm.
Um, you're always expected to have the thing, or at least a baseline of a thing figured out.
Right.
And you're always the one giving advice or giving answers or giving strategies or paths or whatever the case.
Mhm.
So like I just never really felt heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the time where I could talk to a therapist and it was just them talking to me,
Mhm.
Gerald, not the husband, not the father,
Mhm.
it was great. I could
Right.
just talk. So those are my therapy experiences.
So with the first experience, right? Um, I mean, it's already places in society where you can go if you as a black man if you don't want to be heard and seen. If we're being honest, right?
Wow. Yeah.
I, and so when it comes to therapy, one of the things I'm really intentional about with my clients is creating like a safe space. And I know we hear it like all the time. People say like, "Oh, this is a safe space. This is a safe space." Like I'm so sincere about that safe space, especially because like I know it's so many places you can go in society where you don't feel safe,
Yeah.
where you don't feel seen, where you don't feel heard, right? And so last year in working with so many men, I can't tell you how sad it made me to hear black men tell me time after time after time after time that they don't feel safe anywhere.
Mm,
Not at home, not
yeah.
at work,
Yeah.
not in their community, not at church.
I'd be interested to hear like why they don't feel safe, but I could imagine
Yeah,
that there's not like you really, as a man,
yeah,
you
yeah.
really can't be vulnerable. And well, number one, you can't be vulnerable. Number two, you don't really have the tools to be vulnerable.
Mhm.
Um, because like even as I feel like myself being vulnerable and trying to break through, like I feel this inner resistance.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so
Like it ain't safe, don't do that.
not you know what? Not even so much that it's not safe, don't do that. I think it's a um I I I can't afford to do that because I don't know how I'd be looked at afterwards.
Wow.
Because if I'm like super duper like vulnerable and I'm like, oh, I'm crying and weeping and I'm broke, right,
Yeah, yeah.
that whole thing breaks open.
Right.
After that, you move on, and then the next period of disagreement, like now I'm not looked at as strong anymore.
But what experience have you had to kind of form that belief to where, like, if I be vulnerable, you may perceive me different?
I don't know. You're the therapist. I don't know.
Because I mean, it sounds, and listening to you, it sounds like somewhere along the way you had an experience in which you maybe, and I could be wrong, right, chose to be vulnerable and it was weaponized, or you were looked at maybe in a different light.
Mm.
That's what it sounds like when I hear you say that. I mean, is
Yeah,
that true?
maybe. Maybe. I guess when I'm thinking about it, yeah, maybe I can think of one particular time. I can think of one particular time that I was sharing with. Oh, should I say this? Well, she sleeps, so she won't. She doesn't look at the shows, so it's fine. But I was sharing one time, like I was talking with my wife and saying like how I want to be. I want to be better with time
Right.
because she's very, very good with time.
Mhm.
Like I'm not bad with time, but like she's very good with time.
Right.
So it was it could have been very small, but I was like, I want to be better with time. And then
Right.
a thing came up where I wasn't good with time, and then like it kind of came up,
Yeah.
and when it came up, and she wasn't even doing it like it was like I'm gonna beat your head.
Intentionally.
Yeah,
Right. It was the accountability.
yeah, but like the way that it came, and maybe because I'm not vulnerable a lot, and there was a moment that I was vulnerable. I was like, okay, well, I'll never do this again.
Mm.
Um, and that's just kind of a thing that I can kind of remember. And
Let's pause right here for a second though, right? So
okay,
you tell yourself like I'll never do this again. Like that's the inner dialogue. You didn't say that verbally, did you? Or did you say it verbally?
no, it was an inner dialogue.
Okay. So you say then, I'll never do this again, right? And so then like say in conversation with your wife, you don't say certain things. Do you think that can contribute to like disconnection?
Yeah, 100%. But here's the thing, and I wonder if a lot of men, you tell me, I wonder if a lot of men go through the same thing
Yes.
because
Yes.
my my inner dialogue, I think I my inner dialogue is so prevalent in my life. I think it almost may be unhealthy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I talk so much to myself and
Mhm.
think so many things through.
Mhm.
And uh because I'm like we kind of talked about a little bit older off camera, like I'm not in my home state and
Right.
I'm not around my family that I grew up with, family
Right.
friends that I grew up with. And I haven't been for a very, very long time,
Mhm.
at least 14 years.
Oh, that's a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so I kinda always kinda had this thing where I kind of felt, well, at least for 14 years, like never felt home. And the people in that time that have known me, they've known somewhat of a polished version of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like the only vulnerable version of me is back in Texas 14 years ago.
Mhm.
So and then plus, like, I was kinda goofy, I was kind of like I was very, very, very silly in that whole thing, and, like, I said inappropriate things and
Yeah.
just wrong timing and stuff, like, I was young, whatever. Oh, I
Mhm.
was hilarious, but, still, it's like, okay, well, that version of me is kind of offensive, so I need to kinda tone it down.
Tone it down a little
Yeah,
bit.
so I got all of that going on, and it's this constant tone down, and
Right.
then, like, I have cool people in my life, but, like, friends, which is a
Mhm.
whole different conversation.
Mhm.
Um, Not a lot, and even the ones that I do have, we're not close enough for me to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like 14-year ago, Texas Gerald
Mhm.
vulnerability. So, I said all that to say, that leads up to I talk to myself a lot.
Yes. Yes.
And, I think, and maybe, I will give you money if you can answer this question for me, but or at least my EAP. But I think it's to a degree where like I've always talked slow. I'm from Texas,
Yeah.
but I'm self-monitoring so much in my head that it's hard for me just to say a sentence
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Like, because it's just always a self-filtering, like, am I saying the right thing? Will I be offensive? Will I convey the right point? All of this good stuff
Yeah.
instead of just saying what I think. Um,
So this episode is about depression, not anxiety. And but if you want to have me back to talk about anxiety, I specialize in that too.
my
But
lord, we was talking about seasonal depression. What
I know. Listen, we're going in the direction we're supposed to be going.
You asked me the question. Okay, go
But
ahead.
I want to say this, right? One of the things to take into consideration when it comes to the internal dialogue that you're having with yourself, we, people outside of you, don't have access to that. So what you're thinking and what you're telling yourself, all we see is the behavior, right? So
Mm,
all your wife sees is like, he's not as transparent as he was before. Oh, he hasn't mentioned anything else about time ever since I said to him, You said you was gonna work on time management, but I noticed you slacking in this area and I kind of called you out on it. You hadn't mentioned nothing else about time. Hmm. All we see is behavior,
Mm,
right? And so if you're having that conversation within yourself about, ooh, not you calling me out on the fact that I'm not like doing a better job with time management. If you're not verbally sharing that, like, hey babe, like I really kind of felt like some type of way. And if you want to get even deeper, name the type of way. Cause we as black people be like, hey, I felt some type of way. Like
yeah.
anytime I hear somebody say that, I'd be like, name the emotion. So like what was the emotion that you felt when she called you out on the whole time thing?
Are you asking me?
I am. If you can remember.
No. I think it was shame.
Shame. Okay. So if you were to go back to that moment and share your inner dialogue that you're having with your wife and attach the emotion of shame to it, what would you say?
What I would say is, what I would say, I don't know that I would say it because I
Mm.
don't feel comfortable enough saying it.
Okay. This is good. So then you continue to have experiences in which you don't feel comfortable enough to identify your emotions. Now you're suppressing. You're suppressing your emotions consistently. That could lead to depression and a whole bunch of other things too. And it could lead to more disconnection with your partner. Cause again, she don't have access to that internal dialogue. And yes, like this happens a lot with men. Last year, like majority of my year when it with men, one of the things that I noticed, one, if they came to therapy, it was usually because their partner was like, you need to talk to somebody. Right. And so they sign up just, to find some kind of peace within the home. It was either that or them wanting to be better for their children. It was never like, oh, I want to work on myself, so I'm coming to therapy. With women, I get that a lot, right?
Mm.
But with men, they were coming because somebody said they need to talk to somebody. Great. Whatever the case may be, you're here. Let's do the work. But a lot of the work with men was just being able to identify what emotion you're feeling. What does it feel like in your body? Yeah, y'all know anger, but what else you know besides anger?
Can I ask you a question? And
Sure.
I don't wanna lose your train of thought, but does anger and shame feel the same?
That's a great question. It doesn't feel the same for me in my body, right? But
Mm.
I hate to keep using you as a case
No, you're
study,
fine.
but with that particular situation with time management, you say you felt shame. Can you tell me a time in which you felt more recently like anger?
Um, yeah. Um, I think I was doing something and, mind you, let me let me say this to everybody. I'm gonna say this to you and I'm gonna say this to people else.
Okay.
Me and my wife, we have a wonderful relationship. Well,
Yes, 14 years,
14,
right?
yeah, 14 years, but
Yes.
a lot of stuff comes in 14 years. So, um, something was happening, and I think, man, I shouldn't be sharing this. I'm gonna share it, whatever. So,
Okay.
um, like, I had a meeting, and I took her car. I
Yeah.
didn't I didn't think too much of it. I just kind of I took a car. I was go. It was gonna because she has a bigger vehicle
Mhm.
than I do. So, I took her car and I was gonna come back but she had something that she was gonna do.
Right.
Um, and it was a big deal to her.
Mhm.
Um, and I was like, my bad. And then I kind of apologized, and
Yeah.
she really wasn't feeling that apology right then.
Mhm.
And then so my feeling, that was anger, because I was like, well, I am genuinely sorry, but
Mhm.
like if I can't apologize, I don't have anything else.
Okay.
So um that yeah, that did feel.
And what did it feel like in your body when you were feeling that emotion at the time? Like, did you notice like a tightness of your chest? Did you notice a slight headache? Any fidgeting? Can you recall?
Yeah, for sure. Very, very tight in my chest, um very tight in my chest and my gut.
Mhm.
Um and no headache, but everything felt tight.
Yeah.
Everything felt
Yeah.
tight. That's the best way to say it.
And what did you do with what you were feeling in terms of your action? What did you do?
I don't know. I ain't got nothing to do with it.
Right.
I didn't do
But great
anything.
job. Like, great job being able to identify, like, where you felt it at, right? And so when you think about when you felt shame, did it feel that same exact way in your body?
It felt the same way, yes.
Okay.
But so anger feels like all of that. Shame feels like all of that with hopelessness.
Mm. So that's 3 different emotions: hopelessness, shame, and anger. I wanna say this, oftentimes though, so we have primary emotions and we have secondary emotions. Oftentimes, it's something under the anger, right? So, like, can you think of anything that may have been under that anger because you apologized and yet, like, the apology didn't go over well, she still felt upset? Like, did you feel anything else other than anger?
Um, I do have the answer to that. I do have the answer to that.
Do you wanna share?
I guess so. We're here now. My God, I didn't know that this was going to turn into this. This is fine though. This is good. My God. Okay. Um, it um it made me feel like, okay, so I think myself, and I've talked to a other couple of men that I trust,
Yeah.
and I think that I'm not gonna speak for anybody else, but uh for me, there's always this underlying like little boy syndrome, like
Mhm.
trying to grow up.
Mhm.
And like even especially like being a black man, like there's always this, it's kind of reality, but it's not really reality, but it's kind of like this thing of like the world isn't built for us
Yeah. Yeah.
and you're not really built to succeed
Mhm.
and make it.
Mhm.
So we kind of always feel like it's not for us. It won't work out.
Okay.
Like just kind of waiting. I guess the best way to say it is like waiting for the shoe to drop.
Mhm.
Um so like when something like that happens, like whether it's in like marriage or something like that, or like man, fatherhood, especially business stuff like that. When things happen, like the prevalent feeling is that this isn't going to work out.
Yeah.
I'm going to fail,
Yeah.
and there's so much of me that's like fighting that narrative
Right.
because it's working out.
Mm.
Like I have evidence that it's working out,
Yes.
but it's still always that thing in me that's like, man, this isn't gonna work. So and it's that fight, and I'm aware of that, and
Mhm.
like I gotta fight it, but
Mhm.
that takes up energy.
Absolutely. A whole lot of mental energy, right? Like, what I hear is a lot of fear. What are you afraid of?
Failing.
It?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm in, like I'm afraid of oh my God. Okay, so I'm afraid of my wife thinking that I'm not good enough.
Okay.
I'm afraid of because I didn't grow up with my father in the house.
Mhm.
I'm afraid that I'll mess my kids up
Right.
because I really don't know how to be a father.
Mhm.
And I grew up with two brothers, so I didn't even grow up in a house with any girls. So I don't know how to be a father. I don't know how to be a father to girls.
Yeah.
I don't know how to be a husband to my wife because I didn't see. I don't know how to be successful because I didn't grow up with money or that example of stuff
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
Um,
What?
yeah, and so it's like it's all of that.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot in terms of the narrative that you're telling yourself. Like, so much so, I think it overshadow how you are showing up, right? Like,
Mm.
you said a lot about what you don't know how to do or didn't have. Let's talk about what you've done different, and let's name it. What have you done different?
Um, I th- I think I'm a good husband.
Okay.
Um, I'm I'm certainly a better husband than a lot of the examples that I saw.
Mhm.
See, I ain't cheated on my wife, so that's good.
In 14 years? Let's clap it up for that.
Um, I love her and I try to treat her well, and we have good times. My kids are amazing.
Yes.
Like they are really, really, really good.
Yes.
Like they're sweet girls. They're very smart. They're super talented. Like they they have a not even a good. They have a great moral compass.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
they're solid, solid children. Now they're starting to get into teenage, so we'll see. But so far, so good. Uh, I man, I, I think that I have gone further in business um than a lot of my peers.
Mhm.
And I'm tracking the right way. Um, without a formal mentor.
Right.
Um, which is crazy. And I get a chance to mentor and help a lot of people
Mhm.
uh, who are kind of seeing a version of what I'm doing and like, oh, that's cool. And like a lot of people in this space, not just a content creation, but I it's problem solving, um, problem solving with the camera. A lot of people in this space, black folk, I'm sorry to say, they just kind of label themselves as a photographer or a videographer and kind of suppress what they really do and limit what they can be.
Right.
And some people see me and like, oh man, I can do more. I can
Mhm.
be more. And that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
Um, man, I like to think that I'm a good friend. I like to. Um, so I'm you're good. Okay.
Well, I mean, you just stating facts, right? Sometimes we can get so caught up in what we didn't have that we don't give a lot of time and attention to what we have done, what we've been good at doing, right? And so I tell my clients all the time, instead of creating this whole narrative, ask the people that you're in a relationship with what they need from you. Ask your spouse, babe, how can I love you better? Ask your children, if you were to
Mhm.
do in children, you could do like the whole report card thing. Like if you were to give daddy, a grade and how I'm showing up, what would that grade be and why?
That's so good, man. Okay, I'm sorry. That's
And then that way, instead of you telling yourself you're failing in all of these ways, which in reality you're just saying you're telling yourself this so you kind of trick yourself to show up better, right? But it's just mentally exhausting.
well, let me say this. Okay, I don't think that I'm telling myself this. I think that that's the thing that's just there, and I'm
Mhm.
having to fight against,
All the time.
and that's the
All the
exhausting part.
time. Yes.
Yeah,
Versus if you're having a conversation and somebody could tell you what they need.
yeah.
That's a lot different. That's a lot different. If my partner came to me and my partner was like, "Hey babe, like I really need," my son did this more recently. My son came to me, who's a teenager, by the way. Teenagers, they're different.
How old?
He'll be 15 next month. So 14 right now. Freshman in high school. So it's been very interesting, right? But like my 14 soon to be 15-year-old son, he needs a different version of mom than like 10-year-old him needed, than like 5-year-old him needed. So I'm consistently checking in, son, how can I be supportive in your journey? Like, how is it going with high school? While giving him that space to like navigate independence, but like knowing like I'm right here and I'm checking in. But I'm asking him instead of showing up in ways that I think I should be showing up. I'm showing up as how I think a mother should be showing up, but I'm also getting his input. What do you need from me? What do you need more of?
Well, let me ask you this. Okay, because you are a mother of a 15-year-old boy.
Mhm.
Um, you are You're not super old, but
Right.
you're not like 20 either.
Right.
So I would imagine that you kinda grew up in the the older version of
I
parenthood.
did. Yes.
Okay, so like, is that kind of a thing? Like, because this approach of parenting that you're taking right now, which
Mhm,
I think is great,
mhm,
and a lot of people do, and I think is more healthy, I
right.
personally do, but a lot of, like, my parents and their parents' wouldn't.
It was different.
Yeah.
It was different.
Like, so do you feel a type of a inner resistance doing that?
So, I only have 1 child, so let me just preface with that. Um
Well, one's enough, my lord.
But in having that one, I tend to throw that out there, especially for people that have multiple children, right? Because parenting is very challenging.
Yeah.
And then if you have multiple children, like each child needs something different,
Mhm.
right? And so I preface with the fact that I have one. But I a lot of the morals and values that was like poured into me as a youngster, I poured into him. But I've been really intentional about his emotional well-being because he is a black male, right? Not only that, but because of how I was raised, right? Grew up in the church.
Mhm.
Um, and faith is still very, very important. Top priority, number one priority.
Let me ask you this, what denomination?
Pentecostal.
Okay.
Um,
I
n-
grew up Church of God of Christ, can't join in, gotta be born in. So,
but now non-denominational. But
shout
I
out to the non-doms, go ahead.
but I will say this, like I just been really intentional about like since he was like a baby, like
Mm.
you can talk to me about anything because I never want him to feel alone. I never want him to feel like I can't come to my mom, whatever it is. And we've had some conversations. We've had some conversations.
Do you mind sharing? I don't wanna, but
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we've had conversations around sex, and his friends, being intimate. We had some conversations around like abstinence. We have some conversations around different religions. Like
mm,
I remember it was middle school where like he started to kind of get some rebuttal from like other friends that like believed in different gods. And we had some conversations around that. He was like, how, mom, how do we know like our God is the one true God? Like, how do we know other people's gods is not the right God? But being open to having those conversations, I think I know, like, I'm very confident in how I've shown up
yeah,
in that space because me as a kid, there was a lot of questions that I had, but like I kind of got answers from friends.
yeah,
I grew up in a single parent household where like mom was providing and then auntie like was providing. So it was very much a village. Mom, auntie, grandma, they were working. But we also knew like we could go and talk to them, but it was like you don't want to disturb them working and providing for the household. So it was
yeah, no,
like
that's real.
trying to find, I found a lot of comfort and emotional support in my social circles. Was that the best option? Probably not, because those are people that's my age.
Everybody's trying to figure it out together.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in parenting, I've been really intentional with my son about like, let's talk about it. And he know like it to this day, like we'll talk about whatever's on his heart to talk about. But now he's at this phase where he might want to talk, he might not want to talk. And that's like me being open and available to when he wanting to talk. Okay, cool. If not, okay, I respect that too.
But you know what? The thing about kids, though, is that very rarely do they actually remember the details of the conversation.
Mhm.
Like they'll, well, I remember the time that mom tried to talk to me about sex and,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
as they get older and as we transition into adults, we don't remember the conversation, but we do remember that mom was there.
yeah, yeah. And that's one thing he know. Like
Mm,
he know I believe he know, like, I'll always be there. I'll always have his back. I'm
mm.
always a phone call away. Like, it's little things he'll call, and he'll do little things just to kinda check and see.
Mm.
Just check and make sure, like, I'm there. He was like, "I ain't really want nothing. I just was calling to check in. I'm at lunch."
Oh, that's good.
"Okay, cool. How's lunch going?" Lunch is going good. I just was checking in to let you know I'm at lunch and I'm good." Or if he's having like a rough day, like, don't forget, I got such and such test. And so I'm checking in like when he get home, how did such and such test go? How do you
Mm,
feel you did on
mm.
it? Things like that.
You know what that means? That means that he trusts you.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah. I hope so.
man, and like, dude, as a as a parent, I think that's really all that we can really ask.
Yeah.
It because, like, oh, man, so my oldest, God, she's 11. She she's going into being a woman,
Yeah. Yeah.
and, I'm struggling with my role in her life,
Mhm.
because, like, man, that was always my little partner. We go choir. I have so many pictures, in my past life. I used to do a lot of music, choir rehearsals, that whole thing.
Mhm.
And, like, in all of these pictures, I just have me doing something, and she's, like, just wrapped around my leg, or she's, like, in the corner, or she's in a stroller or whatever, 'cause, like,
Right.
that's my little partner. So, like, she's going into a phase now where, like, I really can't help her, um, not a lot, like, as far as being
Mhm.
a woman,
Mhm.
um, and, like, I'm struggling with that as a parent
Yeah.
because, like, what do I do with her? Like, I know I can be a dad to her, and I'll be
Mhm.
solid in that, and all of this stuff, but, like, these most intimate parts of her life where her and her mom are gonna connect the most,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, I'm just not a part of that.
Mhm. But she still needs you just in a different way.
Mm,
Just in a
yeah.
different way, and figuring out what that looks like. You can do something very crucial, teach her about men and different things that, like,
She don't
comes
want my
with
lessons
that.
in me.
I mean, but
'Cause
but you as a male have certain experiences that could be beneficial to her
yeah.
as a young girl, you know?
Yeah, I'm just like, don't trust none of them because 'cause they're all whether they're in church or not, they're all trash. So just don't.
But what if she finds herself attracted to a young boy and, like, wanna come and talk to you about that? Like, how would that make you feel?
It'll be fine. Like, it'll be fine because, like, I really do know that, like, it's a part of life,
Yeah. Yeah.
and, she's growing into it, and it's very natural, and she's a beautiful girl.
Mhm.
She's such a sweet girl.
Mhm.
Like, my natural instincts is, like, I wanna protect her from the jerks,
Mhm.
and to keep her from making stupid mistakes, but, like, as a young boy, like, I was a pretty decent boy, but I was a jerk too, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it's like,
Mhm.
it's it I'm always looking at both sides of it, like,
Yeah.
as the
Yeah.
parent, this is what it is, but at the same time, I know what it's like. I'm not that far removed from being a teenager, so
Right.
I get the things that you just kinda gotta go through.
Mhm.
So, as a parent, I'm fighting, like, what should I really tell her? Like, what should I really say?
Age appropriate conversations. So how old did you say she was?
11, about to be 12.
11. So then 11-year-old, what do you feel comfortable discussing with the 11, almost 12-year-old when it comes to I don't even want to say relationships, but when it comes to maybe interests in the opposite sex?
Um, I feel pretty comfortable with
Okay,
the
good.
whole thing. Like,
Okay.
I feel comfortable. And it's not anything like I feel comfortable with the sex conversation. Like, I feel comfortable with the, like, it's okay to like boys, but don't be obsessed with them. It's okay with,
Mhm.
um um y- y- if boys are telling you this, treating you like this,
Mhm.
acting these types of way, then steer clear of them. Or this is how you know when somebody's truly interested in you.
Yes.
Character things like that. Like, I feel comfortable with that stuff. Um, and, like, I do feel like that she would talk to me. She would not be opposed to talking to me. I know that she just doesn't.
And that makes you feel what?
It makes me feel left out.
Have you ever shared that with her?
In a way, yes.
And what was your response that you got? What was her response?
Um, she was just like, she's kind of like a, old dad, it's okay. I talk to you and I love you. Like,
Yeah.
and that's cool. Like, I can't
Yeah.
really expect any more than that, but
Yeah, but you wanna feel included, but what does inclusion look like
I
in
don't,
your role?
I don't know.
And that's some that's where I would, like, spend time figuring that out.
Mm. Mm,
'Cause to say, like, the feeling is gonna go away, it's not. It's not.
yeah. That's good, man. My lord. Um,
We went from friends, we've talked about parenting, we've talked about depression.
but it's but no, okay. So it's good. It's fine. We'll ride this train. Maybe we'll do just a whole nother thing about seasonal depression, and we'll try this again. But I, I feel like that there are more people that are going through some version of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a firm believer in you don't have to stick to an agenda. Remember, I don't know if they did this at your church, but back in the day when I was growing up in church, they would pass out the programs, and
Mhm.
at the bottom of the program on the back, it was this little small script, and it used to say "Subject to
Subject to
change"
change by the
by the
Holy
Holy
Spirit.
Spirit.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like agendas, I know, like, look, we may go in with an initial agenda, however, that may change.
Let me let me share something. At this point, I'm just kind of getting a free session.
Okay.
So so over the last, oh man, last 4 years, especially 2020, uh man, I went through so much depression, like
Mhm.
depressed.
Mhm.
Um and it's very hard. I think like I don't know. I feel like that I may be like how some people are like a functioning alcoholic.
Yeah.
I think like I'm a functioning depression
Mhm.
person because like it comes in so many waves and it comes so heavy.
Yeah.
Um and because I feel like that the world still has to go on. Like I think that I compartmentalize it,
Mhm.
do the said thing, and then when I rest, it kind of all comes back.
Mhm.
Um and then over time it just kind of goes away.
Mhm.
And then I'm fine until I'm not.
Is it anything in particular that like trigger the way that you're describing you feel?
Um, when when more than one thing is going wrong at the same time.
Yeah.
like um I think my goal in life, and by the way, I don't believe in happy wife, happy life. I
Yeah.
think that's like the worst saying ever in
It
life.
is.
It's
It
like
discredit the husband so much.
my God, it's like, okay, well, my whole life's purpose is to make sure that she's happy so that we can have a peaceful, like that's terrible. So I don't believe in that, but I do believe that um I mean, we're not responsible for each other's happiness, no, but we certainly shouldn't be the reason that they're sad.
Mhm.
I do believe that. Uh but I think that along with the whole fear of failure, it's not gonna work out thing that kinda rests in me.
Yeah.
Um, Anytime that we have a disagreement, she's fine with fighting.
Mhm.
She's 100% fine with fighting.
Mhm.
I'm not
Mhm.
because I feel like with her anyway,
Mhm.
and I feel like that, the thing's gonna fall apart and it's gonna fail.
Yeah.
So I'm fighting against that, and then when something happens and then something else happens, it's like, woe is me.
Mhm.
I'm gonna fight through it.
Mhm.
Mental energy, tired, hopeless, depression. Like that's the cycle.
Mhm.
Um, I would imagine that there are some version of a lot of men out there that go through some version of the same thing. Like, do you see that? And what do you say to that?
Yes. I've seen it a lot. Um the first thing that I really say to it, right? Like is I tend to lean into the fear of failure. Like where is this coming from? Why is this fear so great? Um And
Oh, I was like,
I'm not asking you directly, but, like, with my clients, that's typically where I tend to go to, right? Like, and we're diving deeper, like, we know the emotion, right? Like, it's fear, but it's probably more emotions there too.
yeah.
And then but what are the thoughts that you're having? Like, and like, I even have them do, like, journal exercises, right? And so, like, I will assign a journal activity just to have them journal at least, like, 2 to 3 times before we meet again, and I read through the journals just to kinda get a good idea of how they're kinda conceptualizing their life, if you will,
Are
and
they open to that?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I will say this, like, once the therapeutic rapport has been established and they know, like, they're emotionally safe,
Mm,
then yes, they're open to sharing in that way for the most part, but, like, that therapeutic rapport has and safety is like the prerequisite.
that's so good. That's so good. Yeah, because I'm not talking to somebody that I don't feel
Yeah,
safe with. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
or if you are, it's very surface.
absolutely.
And we when I say we people of color know how to wear a mask. We know how to put on a facade and we know how to show up. We know how to get the job done. We know how to go home. We know how to do that.
Yeah.
We know how to do it well. And so because we know how to do it so well, I could spot it in the therapy room, right? Like, and if a client is kind of struggling with the trusting process, like, I'm leaning into that and I'm asking questions.
Mm.
Cause the more open and vulnerable you are in therapy, the more you're gonna get from it. But let's be honest, sometimes you don't always have the best therapy experience. Thinking back to your couples therapist, the very first one that you had, I could see how that wouldn't be a safe space for you because I mean, you wasn't seen, you wasn't heard, you wasn't validated. So why would you want to be open and, like, do journal entries to a therapist like that? Not knocking her, but like,
Yeah, no, she was terrible. She was
um,
terrible.
but so I'll have them do, like, journal exercises, right? It really gives me insight. Okay, so this is how you're looking at a thing, and then we're diving deeper into that. Like, where is this coming from? Oftentimes, it's not based on present. So when you really think about that fear of failure, like that you mentioned,
Mm.
when you look at all the facts, you're not failing. You're not failing, right? But, like, there's this significant burden that's on you to not be that. Where is that coming from?
I'm not gonna answer it, but no. Gee, okay. Can I answer it quickly?
Sure, have at it.
Okay.
I didn't want you to feel pressure, but yeah, yeah,
I think it's because I mean, and I know this is cliche, but I think was where I grew up because nobody succeeded.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it felt like it felt like success then because some of the people that we thought were successful, they were just the highest ones on the lowest part of the totem pole.
Mm.
So it's like, oh man, well, back in the '90s, man, if I get a job to make $50,000, oh man, I'm,
Winning.
you know what I mean?
Right.
And and but then you kind of get exposed to more stuff, and you get exposed to the world. You start making a little bit, more money. You start,
Mhm.
whatever. You start getting a couple of different advantages, and you like. I feel like that, but this isn't supposed to happen to me.
Mm.
Like, I'm with those guys. Like, it's so funny. My first, we went to Cancun, my first time out of the country. It was so funny, and my wife, she got on me so much because I was so blown away, like, "Man, I'm out of the country," and I kinda did this thing, and, like,
Right.
I started out and I was like, my monologue was like, "I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas," and, um, and she just kept saying, like, "Okay, that's what you did, but you're not that person anymore.
Mhm.
Like, you're not in that environment." But, like, if you're if you're from Fort Worth, you know what that feels like.
Right.
Feels no, like, we're not gonna make it out, and
Mhm.
turns out with world experiences and kind of being around different people, like, everybody feels like that in their city. Like, it may not be Fort Worth, but it's Detroit. It may not be Detroit, but it's New York. It feels like, you know, we're we're not supposed to make it out. And I'm like, man, that's crazy that that's how I feel in my city. Everybody feels like a lot of people feel like that in
Yeah.
their city.
Yeah.
That's a whole society.
It is. So then let me ask you this. If you do make it out said city, then what?
There's this thing that feels like it won't work out
Because it's new,
because
right?
because it's new, and I wasn't in proximity of it working out.
So then, what if this experience is new? This is different from how I grew up, and I'm creating a new narrative for my children. Could that be true? Like, could it be true?
I hope so, yeah.
And when we look at like your life, the last couple of years of it, when we look at your marriage, when we look at what you're doing in terms of the family unit, this is different than how you was raised
Yeah.
from what I'm hearing.
You're right, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
I mean, and
yeah.
you're raising your children in a two-parent home, and you're an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur. But the fear of failing is so great that all of those wins get looked over. Why?
Shamar, I don't Your Majesty, I don't I don't have the answer, but that's
Let's
good.
why though? Why?
I man, I don't know because okay, I feel like the answer that I say is that I feel like that I'm not worthy of the win, but I don't feel like that. I do feel like that, um and this isn't like a thing that I've always felt. Like, I've just now recently been able to feel like that, like, I can win big.
Mhm.
And that's it, for me, like, that's a huge breakthrough.
Yeah.
So I do feel like that, but getting to that place and maintaining that is just mentally exhausting because I'm fighting every other thing. And like, if I had like $2 million tomorrow,
Yeah.
I would, well, I'll buy a Cybertruck. But after that,
Not a Cybertruck.
but after I buy a Cybertruck, I'd spend the rest of the money to just get rid of the feeling that it won't work out because it's so
Mm.
heavy. Like,
Mm,
if I can just wake up and just be like, "Okay, Imma do this and it'll either work out or it won't," whatever the case,
yeah.
I'll learn and I'll move on and go to the next thing. Like, I'll that would be the best feeling in the world. It feels like Shamara, here it goes. It feels like growing up, and shout out to my mama because she did an amazing job raising us. Shout out to mama.
Mhm.
Uh, but if you ever came home from school and you came home to a house where there were no lights because the light got cut off,
Right.
like, every time after that, when you come home, you kinda open the door and it's like "Is the is the lights on?"
Mhm.
type of deal.
Mhm.
Even though it may never happen again,
Yeah.
it's always that, you know, that.
Mhm.
So, like, that feeling always rests with me about things not working out.
Okay.
So if I can take my $2 million and make that go away, then I'd be a happy, happy person.
I have an idea that can help you save your $2 million.
Okay.
What if what if the goal was to learn how to work through the emotion of fear? What if the goal was to learn how to work through any emotion that may show up? We're going to continue to have experiences that are beyond our control, right? Like as a kid, if I come home and the lights are off for whatever reason, I may tell myself, like, because of that experience, shoot, the lights might not be on tomorrow. So when tomorrow come and I come to the house, there because the previous day the lights were off, and now in my mind I know like there's a possibility that the lights might be off. I don't really know, but like let's see. And I open up the door and the lights are on, like, oh dang, the lights on today. Right?
Mm,
But the thought of the lights being off is not gonna go away because I have had the experience of coming home and the lights was off.
yeah.
And so if you learn how to be more mindful of what you're thinking, what you're feeling, being more present, right? Like and working through whatever emotions come up, that's a superpower. 'Cause
Mm.
things are gonna happen. It's inevitable. Things are gonna happen beyond your control. But if you can, like, work through how it's affecting and impacting you, and your emotions don't dictate your behavior, that's better than $2,000,000.
Let me ask you this, because I hate pop psychology.
Yes.
I abs I absolutely hate it. I hate the buzzwords. I hate the somebody saw a 30-second post and now they have all the answers to the world. I hate
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Um, and I think that that's where we're at in culture right now.
Mhm.
Uh,
Not a fan.
yeah, everybody today, if there was somebody who they had an argument, now that person is a narcissist. It's like I hate pop culture. Uh, so having said that, like, what are the tools to work through the fear of the lights being off?
Mhm.
What are those tools?
I think so. I'm gonna use psychology terms, and I'm gonna try to use them in layman terms, right? Like,
Okay.
so it doesn't sound so, because I've heard clients tell me, like, "What does that mean, like, in layman terms?" So I try to use that language.
Okay.
Searching for evidence to support the thought, right? So if I come home and the lights are off, I see it's in front of me. The lights are off. That's evidence that the lights are off. I have
Mm,
this experience that I may come home and the lights may be off again the next day, but I come home, the lights are on. I had the thought that the lights might be off, but the lights weren't off. The evidence is the lights is on. Do that make sense?
yes.
Like, I see that the lights are on. So whenever the thought come up, whether it's 3 months, 3 months from the time the lights was off, 3 months, and I don't know, it just pops up, like, it just come I'm getting ready to open the door, for some reason, the thought just come in my mind like, "Oh, shoot, the lights might be off today." Like, but then I open it, nope, the lights was off 3 months ago, that was 3 months ago, today the lights are on. Right?
Yeah.
Like, let's tie this into, like, a more recent situation. Like, you mentioned, taking your wife's car and her, really feeling some type of way about it. You apologize, but you felt anger,
Yep.
right? So the thought could come up, if you're looking to take your wife's car again, she might feel some type of way, so you might not wanna take her car,
Yeah, that's
right?
absolutely correct. Yeah.
But did your wife say she don't want you to take her car? Or did you just tell yourself like, "Oh, nah, I know how she acted the last time, like, and I don't want a repeat of that, so I'm just not even gonna touch her car," right?
Okay. So number one, I'm gonna need you to stay out my business. No, you're right. Yes,
It's
you're right.
and so instead of going with, like, and that's the cognitive distortion, it's called mind reading, right? So instead of going, like, with the thinking trap of mind reading, like, thinking for your wife, answering for your wife, because you had that unpleasant experience in which you took her car before, and it led to the conflict. So instead of you telling yourself, like, "I can't take her car no more," because it would lead to conflict again, asking your wife, like, "Hey, do you mind if I take your car on Thursday at 5 to go to my meeting?"
Yeah.
So then that helps that thought of, like, "Oh, shoot, like, if I take her car again, like, we're gonna get into an argument." That's not true, but you're creating that because of that unpleasant experience.
Yes. 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 It's like that's oh man. It's all true. I want you to keep going, but I want you to keep going, but we'll we'll have to come back and do this again because I feel like this is opening up like another 3 hours and I
I
want
would love to come back.
I want to be respectful of your time, but this is great. So I want you to finish your thought, but yes, you're 100% right. You're 100% right. Man, it's she didn't have a problem with it. She had a problem. Okay, I'll say this and
Okay.
then say whatever you're gonna say, and then that's gonna be it.
Alright.
Okay. Um, she didn't have a problem with me taking the car. She had the issue with, in her mind, me not considering her
Hmm.
or what she had going on.
Right, right.
And in my mind, it wasn't that. But I do see where she could come up with that.
Mhm.
Um, so like whatever you're about to say, can you work that into it because it was two different perspectives, and
It
I
was.
mean, I guess technically I did not consider her, and I like to think of myself as a considerate person,
Yeah.
but in that action, I didn't consider her,
Mhm.
and I think that that's where a lot of disconnect with the men and women in the relationships
Absolutely.
are. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's why communication is so imperative. So that was like a communication roadblock, right? Like you're thinking one thing, you're saying it one way, she's thinking one thing, she's seeing it another way. And again, she don't have access to your internal dialogue. You don't have access to her
Mhm.
internal dialogue. So we have to be really intentional about having conversations. I am so glad that your wife was able to like identify the fact that it wasn't about the car, like it was the fact that you didn't consider me. That's a lot different than, like, fussing about the car.
Yeah,
But my whole point, in terms of the tools, right? Like, s being intentional about, like, what you're thinking and what's factual. What evidence do you have to support this?
yeah.
The lights are on. Your wife don't mind you using her car. You're winning as an entrepreneur, as a husband, as a father. You're doing so many things different than what you saw coming from Fort Worth, Texas. You're the definition of success, for real. Like, you're the definition of success. At least my definition, anyway.
Man, I wanna leave on that note. I think that's the part that we should leave on. Um, I'm gonna work on it. I'm gonna work on it, and I appreciate you for enlightening me and enlightening that part of what I just don't see.
Yeah,
And I think there are so many people out there that kind of look at their lives in the same way.
absolutely.
Um, and because man, it's kind of like when you, I don't know, you post something on social media and you get 100, oh man, that's great.
Mhm.
But you get that one comment it's like, man, why did you wear that? And
Yeah.
like that's the
And you
only
just laser in and fixate on that one negative comment.
yeah. And so I think that's part of the thing that I go through and a lot of other people go through is that we we are doing pretty okay.
Yeah.
But it's just that one thing that may not even necessarily be all the way true,
Yeah.
but it's that one negative comment that just kind of keeps us up.
Mhm.
And for some of us, it's easier to delete the whole app than to just ignore the comment. And hopefully somebody will I'm not going to spill any beans, but hopefully somebody will start their podcast sooner than later to kind of give us the tools for those of us who don't have EAP. So,
Well,
that's all I say.
it's
No, no, don't say anything else. Don't say anything else.
I wanna say one more thing, though.
Yes, please.
I wanna thank you for your willingness to share openly. I do thank you for, sharing in that way. Wasn't a part of our initial agenda, but,
No.
like, it did require some willingness on your part, and I just wanna thank you for that.
Well, thank you for being amazing, having the tools, and actually going to school to, to be able to help us through it. How can we get a hold of you?
Great question. So you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Live, Learned, Grow with Me. Um, that's a great place to start.
Well, I hope that let me say this. She's not gonna say it. Let me say this. If you're in the Atlanta area and you like some of this on a personal basis, please feel free to reach out. Like she's super cool and she'll answer you. So uh Shamara Moore, Your Majesty. Uh, thank you so much. I'll definitely have you back if you be so gracious enough to come back and man, we'll talk about this some more. Let me know in the comments what did you want to dive into some more? What did she say? What happened in this show that made you like, oh man, hey, I'm that kid from Fort Worth, Texas too, except I just live in Boston. Um, Man, hopefully something was said. Hopefully something happened. Man, it's been a good show. I don't want to end, but I'm running out of memory. So thank y'all. Until the next time. Season 3, we're back. Lunch with the Cool Kids, where I'm not the cool kid, you are. This is gonna be a good season. Man, what a good way to kick it off. So until next time, you go change the world. Don't let the world change you.